Now that we've understood how to make a 3D object from a 2D drawing, the next thing that we want you to do is to start to explore the idea of volume, void, and this idea of poche, right? So what we're going to do is we're going to take a couple of these objects here and we're going to make them interact with one another, okay? So the first assignment really wants you to, or sorry, the second assignment really wants you to explore this idea that the space within an outer envelope can be different than the envelope, right? It's sort of like when you walk through the door of a building, how it's very seldom the shape that you see from the outside, right? So in this case, let's just take a couple simple objects. I'm going to take these two here, okay? And I'm going to just go ahead and I'm going to isolate them. So I'm going to type in the isolate command. And what that does is it hasn't hidden anything on these layers, but it just puts them in isolation mode so that I can kind of, manipulate them without sort of anything else getting in the way. Now, if we wanted to show the other ones, well, the command for that is show, okay, and it will just show all the other objects. But I'm just going to undo that, Control Z, and get back into that isolation mode, okay? So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to imagine that this object is somehow embedded in this object, okay? So we can do that in a few steps here, and that's what we want you to explore, right? So maybe what I do is I bring it over here and I go, oh shucks, it's not small enough to fit in, okay? Or we could go vice versa. We could say that this one is the inside space, but I don't want to do that. I want this one to be the inside space. I don't know why, it just feels more right for me. Well, the first thing I am going to do is I'm going to scale it down. Okay, and I'm just going to use our scale command again. All right, and I'm going to scale it such that I think it's going to fit within. All right, now let's have a look. That's not quite there yet. Okay, so let's try that scale again, just regular scale. Okay, and I'm going to make it like significantly smaller. That way we can make sure that it's going to fit. Okay, so if I bring it over here, yeah, we can see that in that dimension it's going to fit, and in this dimension it's going to fit. Now, one of the things that Rhino will not do is you can't just make a Boolean difference command, with this one and that object that's in the middle, okay? So there's something that we have to do first. Because what Rhino is looking for is it's looking for one object to intersect with another object somehow. And that means that it's got to intersect with these outer faces, okay? So the first thing we are going to do is we're going to create a line. And this line is going to, I'm just going to go from that one midpoint there to here. This line is really going to be a cutting line. It's going to give us the two halves that we're looking for, okay? So I've made that line. I've used my gumball to increase the size, right? And I'm just going to use my gumball to raise it up just a little bit. And that's going to be important. You really want to get it off that surface because anytime that it, you don't want to run into a tolerance issue. So just raise it up arbitrarily. Make sure that it's big enough to cut through the whole object, and then using that extrude ball. Woo, excuse me, my mouse just did some funny things. Let's try this again. Using this extrude ball, I'm going to cut it again one more time here. My apologies, my mouse is not connected properly. There we go. Okay. All right. So now you can see I made a line or a curve, right? And I extruded that curve to make a plane. And if we could imagine this as a cutting plane that's going to cut this volume in half here, okay? And that's exactly what we're going to do. I'm just going to go ahead and delete that extra curve that's left behind because if you can get rid of geometries, it's always good to do so. Now I'm going to take this object here and I'm going to run the split command. We're going to split this one. Okay, and it's going to ask me what are the cutting objects? And in this case, it's going to be this big plane that we've created. And I'm going to hit enter once that's selected. All right, and let's just go ahead. I'm going to hide that. Now, if we have a look at this, these are no more solids, right? This is going to be an important thing to remember. It says one open poly surface added to selection. That's a problem. We don't want that. Because if we were to consider these NURBS geometries, that's what Rhino calls these. These are NURBS, non-uniform rational B-splines. And if I were to ask Rhino, well, what's the thickness of this plane here? It's 0. Okay, so we know that in real life, nothing can have a thickness of 0, but in digital space, it can. But for us, that's a problem. So what we want to do is we're going to run that cap command again. Okay, and I'm going to do that on this side. Perfect. So now I have one side of that object, the other side. I'm just going to move this one back here. Okay, and I'm going to make sure that I get the right corner. There we go. Okay, so I've just snapped those back. Now I'm going to run the Boolean command union. No, sorry. In this case, we're going to run the Boolean difference command. Excuse me. So I'm going to select the larger object. I'm going to run Boolean difference. Okay, and it wants to ask which am I going to subtract with, and that's going to be that object inside. And I want to make sure that my delete input is to no for this one. Okay, so just make sure that's selected first. And then if I can't see it, this might be the time when I want to go into ghosted view so I can actually have a look and select that object. And now I'm just going to hit enter. And if I were to move this out, now you can see that it's created a space within. Okay, so wherever this object was, it sort of subtracted that, right? We had to look at that last time, using objects to sort of carve out. Now this object has a problem immediately, okay? And I can see that here there is a little slice of a plane here, okay? And that's just because of the placement of my object here. It just kind of sliced it so thin. So if I click on this, look at that. See how that open plane created an open poly surface? And this is very common to happen if you've got two planes that are occupying very close spaces in geometry. So the fix for that is quite simple. I just Control Z to get back to where I was before. And I'm going to select that inner object here. And I'm just going to bump it over just a smidgen, okay? Just a little bit, just to make sure that I'm not breaking my model space tolerance. Oh, I forgot to do one step. I have to Boolean difference far enough back that that this is a solid. So let's try this one more time. Okay, so I've Control Z, I've undone all that work, and I'm going to run Boolean difference, hit enter, and select that inner volume. And remember, delete input set to no, so that's good. Now I'm ready to hit enter. Okay, and now it says, oh, one open poly surface added to selection. So you can see that it's going to take a few tries for me to get this quite right. So let's do this another time here. So let's move this maybe back. Now, what you don't want is you don't want that object to intersect with the outer envelope. Not yet, right? We're not there yet. We're not worrying about apertures yet. So I'm just going to try to get this. That looks pretty good. Okay, so let's try Boolean difference one more time. And now if I click on this, it says one closed poly surface added to selection. Great. Now I know I have a valid object and I can see the space within that it's created. And we can do that for this side now without having moved this one out of the way, right? We want to make sure that this is relative to this object, so that we're not kind of creating false geometries, if that makes any sense. So let's run the Boolean difference again. Delete input equals no, good. Select that object, boom, there we go, okay. So now what we've done is we've effectively created two sort of halves to a greater object, okay? Now, I'm just going to rotate that like that so I can sort of show you, move this into place there. Okay, so there we go. So now we know that this one wants to go into that one. Okay,